All right, let's dive into this. Speak to lead, like, highly effective people.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about this one. We all want to be those people in the room, the ones whose words really land and make an impact.
For sure.
And this book seems to lay out a pretty clear path for getting there.
It does, and I think what's so cool about this book is it's not just the theory. It's like this is what worked for the author.
Right, right. So
Uh,
it's like, we're getting their secrets.
Yeah,
Not just some theoretical stuff.
yeah, what they did to really become a more effective speaker.
Exactly, exactly. And it seems to cover so much, like the psychology behind it,
Right.
how to be more confident, even those tough conversations. It's all in there.
Yeah, and one of the first things that really stuck out to me was just how much language shapes our perception of reality.
Okay.
Not just the words themselves, but like the power that they have to shape our thoughts and feelings.
It's like it's deeper than just words, right?
Exactly.
It's the meaning behind them.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was reading this article, I think it was just the other day, about, how we talk about climate change, right? Whether we call it a crisis or change,
Oh, yeah.
and how people react so differently to those two words.
It's true. I mean, even these small tweaks in the words that we use can make a big difference in how people see an issue.
Absolutely.
And what I think is kind of unsettling, actually, is the book talks about how language can be used to divide people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like that us versus them thing that we see everywhere these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, even unintentionally sometimes, I feel like the words that we choose contribute to that.
Absolutely.
So we have to be mindful of that. Right?
Yeah, we really do. I mean, how we speak, how we understand other people,
Absolutely.
it all matters. Now, another thing the book really digs into is, aside from just the words that we say,
Mm.
there's this whole nonverbal world.
Oh, yeah.
Eye contact,
Yeah.
facial expressions, gestures.
Body language, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the secret language.
It is.
Everybody understands it, but we don't always think about it, right?
Exactly.
I've definitely had moments where somebody's like body language is totally different than what they're saying.
Oh, yeah.
It's like their words are saying one thing, but their face is like, no way.
Totally.
And
that can really undermine what you're trying to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what does the book say about, like, for example, eye contact? What are we supposed to be doing with our eyes?
Yeah, it says it's really key to make eye contact with everyone in the group,
Okay.
but don't get, like, laser focused.
You don't want to creep people out. Right.
Exactly. Keep it natural.
Yeah.
And then there's this other tip I thought was kind of funny. They actually say you should practice your facial expressions in the mirror.
Okay.
I laughed when I first read that.
Yeah.
But you know what? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Like, we work so hard on what we're going to say,
Right.
but we don't really pay attention to how our face is reacting.
Right.
And making sure those two things match up, your words and your face.
Right. So they're congruent.
Yeah, it can make you so much more genuine and powerful.
Absolutely. It's almost like you're in control of your, like, nonverbal message.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. What about this whole idea of assertiveness? Because I feel like a lot of people think that's the same as being aggressive.
Yeah.
And it's really not, is
Not
it?
at all. It's about that sweet spot between being a pushover and a bully.
Right. Right.
It's about respecting yourself, respecting other people.
And it's a tough balance.
Yeah.
I know I've messed that up before, where I thought I was being assertive and it came out really aggressive and it backfired.
Yeah. So what does the book say about, how to actually do it?
Yeah. What are some, like, techniques?
Yeah. One of the things they talk about is using I statements. So instead of saying, you're always late, you could say, I feel frustrated when meetings don't start on time.
Okay.
So it's really about owning your feelings without blaming the other person.
Right. Right. It takes the focus off of, like, accusing them
Thanks.
and more on how you feel about it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they also talk a lot about setting boundaries.
Right.
Which is basically just being clear about what you will and won't tolerate.
Right.
And then communicating that really clearly and calmly.
And that's where the voice comes in,
Yeah.
right? Because and I know, like, sometimes if I try to be assertive, my voice gets all shaky, and that doesn't help.
Yeah, for sure. The voice is key. The book suggests, like, even practicing. Just talking in a clear, steady voice.
Yeah.
Even when you feel stressed out or anxious.
Right.
And it's a skill. It takes time.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've got I statements, we've got boundaries, we've got voice control.
Right.
Okay. Now, this next one's really interesting. It's talking about empathy.
Mm,
and empathy being like a secret weapon for influence.
right.
And I've always thought of empathy as like, that's what good people do, right? You try to
Yeah.
understand other people. But I never really thought of it as a way to be more persuasive.
Yeah, and that's what's so cool about this book is they're arguing that true empathy,
Mm.
like really getting where the other person's coming from,
Mm.
actually makes your message stronger.
Oh, okay.
And it's not about like tricking people or manipulating them.
Right, right,
It's about building that bridge of understanding.
right. It reminds me of that thing I read about how people are more likely to donate to charities if they hear a story about someone who's been helped by that charity.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, it's that human connection that gets to you.
Totally. It's that story. Yeah, and the book gives all these great examples of how to use stories and those personal anecdotes to connect with people.
So it's not just about like the logic and the facts, right? It's about painting a picture.
Exactly.
So like if I'm trying to, get my team on board with a new strategy,
Mm.
I shouldn't just be like, here's the data, here's the logic.
Right.
I need to like make it real for them. Tell them a story.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay. I am officially interested now.
Good.
Tell me, what else does the book say about making our message like stick with people?
So it really boils down to these three things.
Mm.
Keep it simple, be direct, and then use examples and stories whenever you can.
I like that. And it all ties back to what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
With the empathy, with the personal stuff.
It really does.
It's all about that human connection.
Exactly. Making it clear, making it relatable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, this next thing, it's called the availability heuristic. I'm not even sure I know what that means.
It's basically our brain's tendency to overestimate how likely something is to happen based on how easily we can remember it.
Okay.
So, like, if you just saw a news report about a plane crash,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be afraid to fly, even though it's statistically really safe.
Right. Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because your brain's like, oh, I remember that plane crash. It could happen to me.
Right. So it's like those vivid memories stick with us.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So how does this apply to communication and influence?
So smart communicators can use this. They make their ideas super vivid and memorable. So that's what sticks in your mind.
So it's not just about like dry facts and figures again.
Yeah.
You have to make it like come alive for people.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Okay. I see where you're going with this.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want people to like get on board with my awesome project,
Yeah.
I shouldn't just give them a boring spreadsheet.
No, exactly. Paint them a picture, make them feel it.
Exactly. Make it real for them. Okay, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how like understanding these psychological things, it can really like up your communication game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the
Yeah.
book goes even further. It talks about how to be more memorable, not in like a cheesy way, but in a way that's true to yourself.
Right, because you don't want to be fake. Right. People see right through that.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So how do you do that? How do you be like authentically memorable?
Yeah, well, they talk about those first impressions being so crucial.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not just about how you look.
Right.
It's about how you present yourself.
Okay.
So yeah, eye contact, firm handshake, all that stuff matters.
Mm.
But it's more than that. It's about showing up and being engaged in the conversation,
Right.
really listening to what the other person's saying.
Right.
And then a little humor never hurts.
Right. No. I'm all about that.
Yeah,
Make them laugh.
totally. It can really make you more likable and memorable.
Absolutely. This is great stuff. It's like a masterclass in communication. But what about those of us who struggle with self-doubt?
Yeah.
Can we still be influential even if we don't always feel confident?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually leads perfectly into the next section of the book, which is all about boosting your self-esteem. Because, I think a lot of people don't realize how much self-esteem affects how other people see you.
Right. Right. If you don't believe in yourself, why should anyone else?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the book really emphasizes that self-esteem isn't just about feeling good.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how those feelings impact how other people see you, how you project yourself into the world.
It's like it affects everything, right?
It does. It affects your communication, your influence.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So, what are some ways to actually cultivate self-esteem?
Yeah. How do we do that?
Well, the book gives some great tips, like practicing positive self-talk, setting those achievable goals, and really taking the time to recognize your own strengths.
Okay.
It's all about shifting that inner narrative
Right.
from self-criticism to, like, self-compassion.
Oh, I like that. I'm a huge believer in positive self-talk. We can be so mean to ourselves sometimes.
Yeah, we are our own worst critic.
Yeah, yeah. So we need to be our own cheerleader too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the achievable goals, that's huge too.
Yeah.
I know if I set these crazy high expectations for myself and I don't reach them, I feel terrible.
Oh,
But if you break it down into smaller steps,
right.
you can celebrate those wins
Yeah.
and it keeps you motivated.
Exactly. It's like you're building yourself up one step at a time.
Absolutely. This has been so insightful so far, and we've only just scratched the surface of this book.
I know there's so much more to explore,
Yeah.
but we'll have to save that for next time.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
me too. Okay, so picking up where we left off, let's talk about social influence.
Yeah, because when I hear that, I think, those Instagram stars with millions of followers
Right.
telling everyone what to buy. But this book's not really about that, is it?
No, not exactly. It's more about, like, we're all influencers in some way.
Right.
Like, whether you're leading a team or trying to get your point across in a meeting,
Right.
or even just, like, convincing your friend to see that new movie with you.
Right. It's
It's
all
all
influence, right?
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. It's like we all have that power.
Yeah.
So, what about those social media influences, though? The ones who really seem to, like, nail it. What can we learn from them?
Well, the book breaks down their approach. And one of the first things they talk about is content creation. So, really being strategic about what you're putting out there,
Okay.
knowing your audience, what they want, what they need, and tailoring your message accordingly.
So it's not just, like, posting random stuff and hoping people like it?
No, no, not at all.
You got to be intentional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole idea of monetization, which might seem a little weird, but it's not about, making money off every conversation.
Okay.
It's more about understanding this principle of value exchange. What are you offering your audience? What are they getting in return?
Even if it's not money. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, it could be information or inspiration or even just a sense of connection. Right, right, because we're always giving something in our interactions, so we
Yeah.
need to be clear about what that is.
Totally. Yeah. Otherwise, people don't know why they should listen.
Okay, so we've got the content, we've got the value. What else do these successful influencers do?
They establish credibility.
Okay,
So, building that trust with their audience
right.
by being authentic, being transparent, being consistent.
But it's about being real, basically.
Exactly. Not being afraid to
Yeah.
show those, like, less perfect parts of yourself, too.
Right. It's funny because I think sometimes, especially at work, I feel like I have to present this super polished image.
Yeah.
But honestly, the people I connect with most are the ones who are willing to let their guard down a bit.
Totally.
Be vulnerable.
I agree. Authenticity is way more compelling than perfection.
Absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about those communication challenges.
Okay.
Because we all have them, right?
Oh, for sure.
Even the best communicators sometimes have those awkward moments where they just can't seem to get their point across.
Yeah, those conversations that go nowhere.
Mhm.
Or you're giving a presentation and it totally flops.
Right, right. So what does the book say about handling those situations?
Well, one of the things they emphasize is the importance of asking questions.
Okay.
And, I know I'm guilty of this sometimes. I get so caught up in what I want to say that I forget to actually listen. It happens. But the book's point is that questions are essential for good communication. It shows you're actually interested in the other person.
Right. Not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Exactly.
And you can get so much more information by asking questions.
Yeah. It helps you understand their perspective, where they're coming from.
It's like that saying, seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Totally. Now, another challenge is those difficult situations, whether it's a disagreement with a coworker or tension in a meeting, even like an argument with your partner.
Oh, yeah, those are the tough ones.
And those are the times when it's easy to just let your emotions take over.
Right. Say things you regret later.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So the book really stresses staying calm, managing your emotions, even when you're stressed out.
Okay.
It's about not letting your emotions, like, hijack the whole conversation.
Easier said than done, though.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But there are things you can do. Like, some people find that taking a few deep breaths really helps.
Okay.
Others need to, like, step away from the situation for a minute to collect their thoughts.
Right. Right.
It's about finding what works for you.
Yeah. And even when things get heated, remember that empathy thing we were talking about?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like trying to see things from their side.
Absolutely. Even if you don't agree with them.
Right, right.
Just recognizing their emotions, validating their
And
feelings.
sometimes it's okay to just agree to disagree, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Not every conflict needs a winner and a loser.
Exactly. Okay, so communication challenges, difficult conversations. Now let's talk about stress, because I think we can all relate to that one.
For sure. It's like a constant in our lives these days.
And the book says that stress can really mess with our ability to communicate well.
It does.
I know I've definitely been there. Like when I'm super stressed out, it's hard to think clearly.
Right?
It's hard to express myself, to listen. It's just, yeah.
Totally. So the book suggests that managing stress is key not just for like your mental health,
Mm-hmm.
but for your communication skills too.
Okay, give me some tips. What can we do?
One of the biggest things is setting boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Learning to say no to things that drain your energy.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me.
It is, it is. But the book reminds us that saying no to some things frees you up to say yes to the things that really matter.
Right, right.
It's about protecting your time and energy.
And that ties into self-care, right?
Yeah.
Like getting enough sleep, eating well,
Yeah.
exercising, all that stuff.
Totally, yeah. Taking care of yourself is not selfish.
Right.
It's essential.
It makes you better at everything. Right?
Exactly, including communication.
Including communication. And, sometimes self-care means reaching out for help when you need it. Talking to a friend, a therapist, a mentor.
Right, having that support system.
Exactly. You don't have to go through it alone.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I'm walking away with so many new tools for communication,
Me too.
and there's still more to cover.
There is.
So let's take a quick break, and then we'll wrap things up with our final thoughts. Okay, so we're back for our final thoughts on Speak to Lead Like Highly Effective People. This deep dive has really got me thinking about all these different layers of communication.
It's pretty amazing, right? All these subtle things that can make such a big difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about this idea of perception that the book touches on toward the end.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's all about how our brains work. Like we're constantly bombarded with information, so our brains have to create these shortcuts to process it all.
Right, kind of like filters. Exactly, mental filters. And those filters can be really helpful. They help us make quick decisions, but they can also lead to these biases that can really mess with communication.
So we need to be aware of those biases, right? Both in ourselves and the people we're talking to.
Absolutely. And what's really cool is that the book talks about how you can actually use those biases strategically to make your communication more effective.
So it's not about eliminating bias altogether, which is probably impossible.
Right.
It's about understanding it and using it to your advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you're giving a presentation, right? And you know that people tend to be more persuaded by someone they see as an expert. Well, you can use that. Subtly highlight your credentials or your experience in a way that feels authentic.
I see, I see. Or if you're trying to connect with a potential client, you could, I don't know, emphasize your shared interests or background to build that rapport.
Exactly. It's all about tapping into those psychological factors to make your message land.
Okay, this is blowing my mind a little bit.
Good. It's powerful stuff.
It is. Something else from the book that I really connected with was the importance of self-belief.
Yes. Like really believing in your message, in your vision.
Because if you don't, why should anyone else?
Exactly. It goes back to that authenticity thing we were talking about.
Right.
People can tell when you're speaking from the heart, and that makes your message so much more powerful.
It's like when you see those amazing speakers, the ones who just light up the room. You can feel their passion and it just draws you in.
Exactly. Self-belief is like a magnet.
Wow. Okay, I have to say, this deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about communication, but about myself.
I know, right? It's been a real journey.
It has. And I hope our listeners feel inspired to check out this book and continue exploring all these amazing ideas.
Absolutely. There's so much more to discover.
And as we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with a thought. We talked about social influencers and how they've really figured out how to persuade people. Who are some influencers that you admire? And what are they doing that you could try out in your own communication? It's something to think about as you keep working on those communication skills.
That's a great challenge to leave everyone with. And remember, becoming a better communicator is an ongoing process. Just keep learning, keep practicing, and you'll get there.
Well said. All right, that's a wrap for our deep dive into Seek to Lead Like Highly Effective People. Thanks for joining us. I hope